Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's Doing. Jimmy Breslin used to say, there's no such thing as a newspaper reporter anymore. But JB used to say, yeah, but when I did it, I was big. JB number one. And we're here today with a dynamic young writer, a new voice in New York City, Ross Barkan. He's an award-winning journalist, novelist, essayist, political currents writer, and he's the editor-in-chief of the online magazine, the Metropolitan Review. He's also a columnist for New York Magazine and a contributing writer at the New York Times Magazine. Well, Ross, that's a mouthful. Ross, how'd you end up getting in the game?
Excellent question. So I'm from the city. Grew up in Bay Ridge. My parents were not writers or journalists, but they were very literate people. My both heavy readers, and my father especially was a big reader of the news, fiction as well. Great admirer of your father, so I learned about Jimmy Breslin through my father, especially, who would extol him all the time and talk about kind of the heyday, the Breslin Hamill era of newspapers, of which my father was a great fan. And so I always, was very interested in reading and writing, I think through my parents. And really, I wanted to be, when I went to college, I went to Stony Brook, and I was going to be an English teacher because I wanted to, be employed after college, and getting certified was kind of a smart thing to do. I loved writing. I loved writing fiction, and I really liked writing for the sort of alternative newspaper we had on campus, which I always say back then was kind of like a crazier Village Voice that kind of had some of that energy. But actually could be even more really unhinged when it came to the satire. And I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. It was almost like an underground, one of those East Village underground papers you heard about that existed in the 60s for a few years. So I graduated college and actually had trouble finding a teaching job. It was not too long after the 2008 crash, so there were a lot of cutbacks and they weren't really hiring teachers, so I was subbing. And I got a job at the Queens Tribune, which no longer exists. And that's certainly a sad but true story of talk about publications, even in my lifetime. They were a local newspaper out in Queens, in Whitestone. So I became a local news reporter when I was 22 years old. And it was a great and terrible job. Great because it really was fascinating. And I really loved doing it. You wrote about everything, wrote about, politics, transportation, crime. You are in the streets. I started out in like Northeast Queens. I ended up, having my beat being most of Queens when it was all said and done. I was basically everywhere. So got to know Queens very well. But I say it's terrible because the pay was very low. And the hours were pretty, to this day, I think the hardest I ever worked was at that local newspaper, because you were expected to do everything. You were writing, you basically were editing, even though the editor was supposed to edit. And we had a very mercurial, tough and weird owner, not the best guy. So that was like my introduction, and I was really liking it. I was fortunate. I left there. Was actually fired from there for running afoul of the owner, because he didn't like he didn't like me originally because I did a piece that was critical of Resorts World Casino, the casino down in actually down right near where your father grew up, down in Southern Queens,
Ozone Park.
Yeah, down in Ozone Park, and I was to this day, I'm very much a gambling skeptic and a gambling critic. So I wrote a critical piece about it. And we were getting a big ad buy that Thanksgiving from Resorts World. So that's I was going to do a series. That series got killed, and then over the course of the year, it was never the most beloved. And finally, I'm trying to remember what the precipitating moment was, but the editor canned me when I was like 23. But I was fortunate. It was right after, it was right before the 2013 mayoral race. So the New York Observer, another once great newspaper that now doesn't really exist anymore, but still was going strong in 2013, hired me initially as an intern, and then became a staff writer to write about politics there. So I covered the the Anthony Weiner saga up close, the rise of Bill de Blasio. And I became a City Hall reporter. And actually, it was that race where I first started reading Jimmy Breslin a lot more, because I remember reading, still to this day, maybe my favorite piece of his, which actually did not make the Library of America anthology, was on John Lindsay. Is Lindsay Too Tall to Be Mayor? His big New York Magazine piece in 1969, which came out, I think, right after he'd run with Mailer. And it was when Lindsay was, I think, lost the Republican primary and was now moving on into the general election as the Liberal Party nominee. And it was such a fun piece. I mean, so well written and just kind of vibrant in a way that I hadn't seen from a lot of political journalism, honestly. So I remember reading that piece very distinctly when I was 23 and thinking, like, this is kind of the stuff that I would like to do. And the Observer was a good place where I kind of got a chance to do some of it. Like, they were a more literary paper. They were owned by Jared Kushner. It's the other part of this. Jared Kushner was the owner. So I only met Jared once or twice at a holiday party. Very briefly spoke to him. And things went off the rails there when Trump ran for president. But the truth is, Jared was not a bad owner until Trump ran. He actually was he bought it in 2005, and the paper was pretty good into the mid-2010s. A lot of very good journalists worked there. We had a real politics desk, we had an arts desk, we had a real estate desk, we had a culture, we kind of covered a lot of things. So, but it really, once Trump ran, that's when I was a national reporter and I decided to quit, because the meddling began and Jared was clearly much more invested in getting his father-in-law elected than running a paper. And it ceased.
Let me cut you off there for a moment. You brought up a key point. No. You brought up a key point. My father said you have to have an opinion. Can you really write with an opinion right now?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I do. I do a column now at New York Mag. I'm pretty opinionated, certainly on Substack too. I mean, you can. I think what your father did very well was he paired it with, actual reporting and, and a real awareness for what was happening in the city and in the streets. And I can't claim to be shoe leather as he was, but I can say I do bring a lot of reporting experience into what I do. And I think when you have the reporting experience, you are very cognizant of other opinions. And I think if you're doing a column and you're trying to convince someone, the best column will be those that are aware of the other side, know those arguments, and are ready to refute them. I think a mistake a lot of opinion writers, pundits make today is they don't really consider how someone else might think, how another political party might think. I mean, how voters might think. So I do a lot of opinion, more opinion than I used to. I mean, when I started, I was not an opinion writer. I was not an opinion writer in my early to mid 20s. I didn't really start doing opinion until I became a freelancer for the Village Voice, RIP, in around.
Is it vanishing though? Is opinion writing vanishing? Is everybody afraid now to have an opinion? You'll get in trouble. You mentioned Jared Trump and Jared Trump.
I mean, I think it's transformed. I mean, people certainly, journalists on social media or columnists, people express a lot of opinions. I do think what has changed is not that people don't have opinions. It's that you don't see as many paid full-time newspaper columnists. The job that not just Jimmy Breslin did, but if you look back at New York City in the 1990s and 2000s even, there were probably 9 or 10 at least working full-time newspaper columnists who are giving their opinions, doing some reporting. Even when I came up, I remember reading Michael Powell a lot in the New York Times. I was a great admirer of his city column. That was kind of the end of Clyde Haberman at the Times. And the Times really, I mean, they just became a national opinion paper and really mostly killed off that. And of course, the decline of the Daily News, you don't have the big daily news columnists. And then the New York Post, you do actually have a lot of columnists, but they're kind of national right-wing people. They're not really, they don't really have a city columnist, the New York Post, I can think of at least. So I do think opinion
That's very bad though, because you mentioned that you did the legwork. My father said if you didn't circulate and do the legwork, Jimmy Breslin said if you didn't circulate and do the legwork, you've got nothing. You don't have the real feel. You don't have the rhythm, the understanding of people. You do that. Can you get that now, or is everybody just writing for an algorithm?
I think it's a good question. I think that it's got, because the industry has gotten much more precarious and the finance are not nearly as good. It is harder to do the sort of research and work that someone like Jimmy Breslin could do, and a lot of other columnists too, or staff writers, where you could really either take your time, or you are given the protection of a newspaper, of a union. You're able to go out and do a lot of this stuff. I think now there's a lot of pressure, definitely, from digital outlets to pursue traffic hits. I mean, I think that's changing a little bit. I think news organizations have gotten smarter about not chasing the big hit, and sort of trying to build sustainable audiences. I do see some shift. I mean, there's a lot of good nonprofit, like there are good nonprofit outlets in New York City now, like The City, and Gothamist. But
yes, but you said, not to interrupt you, but you said
yeah.
Everybody writes long now, 10,000, 15, 20,000. I mean, most people can't read 3 sentences.
What?
Breslin and Wolf and Gloria saying they wrote 600-800 words.
Well, I'd say I don't think people go. I will go long. Most people don't go long today. I would say you actually.
I thought I read where you said people love to write long now.
Oh, sort of. I mean, Substack has that. I would say in the magazine world, though, they don't go that. New York Mag a little bit, but I'd say that actually I think the 10,000 word piece was more common in the 1960s and 70s, when you had these big magazines like Esquire, like the old New York Mag,
Yes.
Saturday Evening Post a little bit. I mean, you had a lot of these sort of like very like well-funded magazines that gave very big budgets to writers, like a Tom Wolfe. I mean, Tom Wolfe would go for many thousands of words. I mean, you different types of writers, right? You had the columnists, you had Jimmy Breslin,
yeah.
Hamill's obviously doing the shorter hits, and you had the magazine writers who would do longer stuff. I mean, even New Yorker, they once ran all of Hiroshima, I think, over an entire issue. The John Hersey famous book was originally just ran, and a mailer, another one would serialize like basically whole books through like Harper's and other magazines, or Vanity Fair or something. So I mean, it's weird. I mean, I think Substack has brought back some of the length stuff. I don't think you see it as much in the mainstream institutions. If anything, I usually face like pretty big word constraints. I mean, New York Mag, I do a column, it's really 800 words. I mean, 1,000 would be high. So you still,
does it get self-indulgent after that?
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, maybe then, I mean, and look, in some ways, look at the New Journalist, there was a self-indulgent aspect to the way, someone like Tom Wolfe would write, but no, I mean, or Mailer certainly, but I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on the subject matter. I mean, sometimes a subject is not worth, that many words, but then sometimes it is. I mean, a great magazine piece can take many thousands of words to unspool, to get at a certain narrative, and tell a story, which, like I said, one of my favorite Breslin pieces is, it's not, the columns are great too, and I wrote about them in my review a few years ago, but that Lindsay New York Mag piece must have been, I'm guessing, 5,000 words at least. And it could be self-indulgent. He writes, which I loved about it, he's writing about going drinking, his wife complaining, going out to the Hamptons. Like it's very personal. Well,
he was JB number one in his mind. His ego was so big, he would write what he wanted, and the hell with everyone else. I don't know today, zeroing back in on, because he would say, let's reminisce about tomorrow. That's why I was speaking with you.
Yes.
Are the editors tough enough today? Those guys, Wolfe, Breslin, Didion, they had great editors.
Yeah.
Dick Wall, Jim Bellows.
I think just because the economics of the industry have gotten worse, you don't have as many career editors. I mean, I think the thing that has changed is that editors are much more overworked now. They aren't paid as well. So there are still a lot of good, I mean, New York Mag has a lot of good editors. I'll say, working with them, very strong editors. But they are a magazine, the rare one, that has really kept its, sort of kept its cachet. I think Vanity Fair has to an extent too. But I think it's less about toughness and just more of the economics of it. I mean, you don't have, an editor, Clay Felker type, or, whatever, where, they could be in the industry for 30, 40 years and make a very good living and kind of have a lot of stability, because just the magazines made money, the newspapers made money, the newspapers certainly made money. So I think now it is a cohort, like, you do have a lot of good editors, but they're under a lot of pressure. They're taking on big workloads, and they're not necessarily paid as well relative, if you adjust for inflation, they certainly aren't being paid as well. And you look at the money industry and just for inflation, I mean, there's so much more money in 20th century journalism and writing in general. I mean, looking at what, a Jimmy Breslin could get paid for a book, or for a staff writer job at his stature, things have just shifted monetarily. So I do think I have sympathy for the editor today, where it is less cushy, and you don't have the same like ability to just dig in like you could, I think, at these publications and bulletins.
That's interesting you say that. That Russ, it's like, first off, he would boast, nobody got paid more money than me than ever to write a newspaper column. And I was a kid, and I used to look at him and say, okay, how much, Dad? But I didn't.
He wouldn't talk. Yeah, I love.
He loved the fact that nobody came near him. He was in his own world, so I didn't get into that. But you brought up an interesting point. You said, and you do it. You write fiction and you write real hard news. You write, real journalism. So it's fiction and nonfiction.
Yes,
that you
I
cover.
do.
And all the new journalists, they did that. Wolf did it. He said Breslin did it. Didion did it.
They all did, yeah.
Can you even do that really today? I mean, you're one of the few that just caught my eye here.
I think, I think about this a lot, actually, and I've written about it because I get this reaction, from time to time. People, wow, like you write nonfiction and fiction. What is that like? I mean, my response is that in the 20th century, they all did it. I mean, like you tick off any major writer who maybe was more known, like Breslin or Didion for their nonfiction. They all wrote novels. They wrote many of them. Like Hamill wrote tons of novels. I mean, Jimmy wrote tons of novels. Didion obviously wrote many novels. Wolf became Wolf
iconic.
Became pissed off, I think, Norman Mailer when he decided to do the novel, and the novel was very big. And Bonfire of the Vanities, one of my favorite books. So I think that there's too much bifurcation today. I do think we're in this era of specialization, which goes beyond even the news and beyond writing, where I'm a big baseball fan, and you look at now like athletes coming up, they're no longer 3-sport athletes in high school. If you're a great pitcher, you're focusing on pitching when you're 9 years old. That's what you do. You look at, I think in this sort of era, you're supposed to pick a thing and just try to do it well, and that's it.
Whereas it's no good. It's no good.
It's not.
What you do is better.
I agree. I agree. And I do think more,
if you have the talent to do it like you, by the way.
Yeah.
You guys are hybrids, which I think any writer should be, because my father would scream, read fiction, write fiction.
I think a lot of journalists and nonfiction writers do not read enough fiction. I remember when I was reading, Library of America edition of your father's columns, and I could see he was very well read. I remember he referenced like Henry Miller in one, and I grew up reading Miller as well. And he's not the type of thing you'd think a gumshoe reporter would be reading Henry Miller, but clearly he was. And I do think there is a lack of interest among a lot of journalists in the arts, in fiction, and that makes me upset. I think these worlds are
just
very
so you know,
separate.
Not to interrupt you, just so you know, he used to go to bed at night. There'd be a big James Joyce volume there, and or something with Dostoevsky. And I remember I couldn't even read the name or pronounce it, and he'd be like, "Just reading." And then the next day, he'd go cover a murder on Flatbush Avenue.
Yeah, no, that's what you have to do. And I think too many journalists just do not do that. They just read nonfiction. They just read like articles and nonfiction books or the news. I'm like, no, you have to read fiction. You have to really broaden your palette. So I do wish more did what I did. I don't think it should be uncommon. I think there's no reason that more journalists can't read fiction, attempt fiction, think about it more seriously. Fiction was my first love. So for me, I came to it first, and then journalism was something, honestly, like I loved writing and I wanted to have a way to have a career that involved writing. And I was not like a natural journalist, I would say. I was a bit shy and kind of getting out there more and pushing yourself out there to talk to people. But I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy, I think having an understanding of the world. I think novelists, to their problem will be because they haven't really thought that hard about journalism or the journalism space. They're not necessarily have the most sophisticated understanding of human affairs. So I do think that's a real asset to be able to do both. I think that's why, again, yeah, you said you pick any of the major writers of the 20th century, novels and nonfiction went together.
Truman Capote, In Cold Blood.
Yeah.
My father used to say In Cold Blood was almost for him like the ultimate story where you merged fiction and nonfiction.
Yes.
He told me Capote, who was best?
Capote, and certainly Capote. I mean, Mailer doing reporting.
No, but In Cold Blood, he said, was the definitive one that crossed over from reporting into a novel.
Yeah, that was kind of the big one. Yeah, it came out like 66. That was sort of blew the doors open to kind of a whole era. And then others, we for the Metropolitan Review, for our first, we have a print issue now. Our first print issue, we got to interview Gay Talese, which was amazing. 93 years old, still very sharp. Mind is undiminished. Gay. He was interesting in that he's very literary, though he he said he never felt that he could do the novel. Like he clearly could have. He was talented enough, but I think he had such a reverence for the novel almost. And he was very close with Tom Wolfe. They were very close friends, and so much reverence for the novel. He never would write one, but he did publish like a short story that we actually republished ourselves. So he had a real literary sensibility, obviously, from his journalism. I mean, Frank Sinatra as a whole. His Joe DiMaggio profile is great too. And his book, which I, as a Bay Ridge resident, I read recently. I bought a first edition, had him sign The Bridge, about the building of the Verrazano Bridge, which is so good. And that's like classic on the ground reporting. I mean, he was there at the construction of the Verrazano Bridge, interviewing all these men, all the residents of Bay Ridge, as Moses is running it through right through the neighborhood. It's such a good book. It's a short book too, but
I have to read that.
It's a quick read. The Bridge. It's so basically.
You wrote something interesting. You said, readers. You wrote readers' effort for writers who make effort. Yeah. What's effort?
I think today.
I'm not putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think today, especially if you're reading online, there's so many things to read. It's just sort of like a fire hose of content, for lack of a better word. I do think that rather than doing like short form, bite-sized stuff, like kind of lazy stuff, if you put a lot of work into something, if you do a lot of like research, reporting, or just thought, I mean, it doesn't have to be reporting, but really thought, if you clearly care and put in show that in this piece, it was something that took real genuine thought and effort, you'll be rewarded. I mean, I see it all the time now where on Substack, certainly the big piece, the one that clearly took someone more time and more care, will perform better, will have more of an audience than the piece that was dashed off in 2 minutes that clearly is not very good. So I think it runs counter to what the internet, I think, was in the last decade, where everyone was chasing the quick hits and trying to get a good headline and make it go viral. I think now, people are a bit tired of that, honestly. And now you have AI just pushing crap everywhere. So I think there's a lot of people who don't want to read crap. I mean, there's very few people who enjoy just imbibing pure crap. So I found that if you publish really in-depth, good writing, it still finds an audience, certainly.
That was very good. And I completely agree with you. And you were making me think, big city columnists, they did it without AI.
Yeah.
They had strong opinions and they gave it. You think it can hold up now still?
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
They were dangerous.
Yes.
Breslin wrote dangerous. Hamill wrote dangerous.
Yes.
Wolf wrote dangerous. Now, or is everyone afraid? Like, oh, I'll get fired.
I don't know if they're afraid. I mean, in terms of the big city columnist thing, I'll just speak to that. I mean, there's aren't the opportunities. I mean, I don't. The New York Times frustrates me because they've got money. They're very successful. They've got a lot of columnists, but other than Mara Gay, who's pretty good, she once in a while does a column. They don't have dedicated New York City columnists, and I don't really get why. Like, it's not a money thing for them. They have the money. They could easily pay someone, whether a Michael Powell or a younger person, whoever, to do like even once to twice a week. They still have Genia Belafonte. She's kind of the last one. But
Yes.
Even when I was just reading in the early 2010s, they had multiple city columnists. So, like the Daily News, the excuse is, I mean, they're owned by a horrible hedge fund. I hope someday that hedge fund sells and someone could buy the paper and start to bring it back to where it, even half where it was on when your father was there. But the Times is as less of an excuse because they have the money. So it does frustrate me that, like, if I ran the Metro, what do they call it, the New York section now, I'd have like maybe two columnists who are paid to write, maybe a couple of columns a week that are both like reported an opinion. Again, the guy I go back to, the last one who I thought was really good, Michael Powell, who I learned a lot from like city politics, just reading his column. He'd write like the Queens Democratic Party in the New York Times. And I was like, well, my father would like give it to me. He's like, this is like what columns are. You should read this. So that can come back. I mean, that's if you've got the resources you can. There is a good new publication that is very opinionated is Hellgate, which is like a kind of like lefty digital outlet. They are very opinionated. They're very sharp and spiky, a little bit like the Old Village Voice. A lot of them, I think a lot of the other outlets are good, but don't have like those columnist voices, like the City, which is the nonprofit. The City is very good reporting. They do a really good job. A lot of talented people there. You learn a lot about what's happening in city government today by reading them. But no columnists, nothing like just a person there sounding off. So
like
I do
Breslin
think
became very famous.
Yeah.
Breslin became very famous. He became his own, my father, Breslin, he became very famous where Jimmy, everybody knew him everywhere. It was kind of odd. You almost thought he was like a TV personality.
Yes.
And Talise maybe a little bit less so. Gloria Steinem became big as she wanted to be. Wolf became big in his own right with the white suits. They all had a persona.
Yes.
I used to bring my father everywhere. Jimmy, I hate you. Jimmy, you're a slob. Jimmy, you're great. Jimmy, I'll kill you. No matter, there was always something. Jimmy. Can any writer even get that sort of personality, get that sort of attention now, or are you stopped by the system?
Yeah, it's harder. I'd say it's definitely harder. I mean, I think going back
what reporter hosted Saturday Night Live? No. What reporter was on the news at night? What reporter was an actor in The French Connection? I mean, he almost took it to a whole level of craziness.
Yeah.
And then novels. But I think now, all these writers, I call guys up and I say, hey, you should write this, you should write that. Oh, I can't. I go, why? Get your editor, tell him. Oh, no, the algorithm. And I think to myself, man.
I think writers sometimes also, I mean, yes, there are... You run up against editors today who are not as indulgent. Again, the economics of the industry have changed a lot. I do think writers, sometimes self-censor too much too. I mean, I'm someone, if I want to write something, the Substack exists now. I mean, you can get your stuff out there. So I do think people get too cautious. I will say there is a less colorful element to how people present themselves. There are, in some ways, fewer distinct personalities. But I also just think, in addition to a lot of writers will blame the system, and you can blame the system. I criticize the system a lot, but also it's on you too. I mean, you as the writer, you're not going to get shot in the street for having an opinion. You're not going to be imprisoned. We live in the United States of America. We still have the First Amendment. It still is a safe place, relatively speaking, to write what you want to write. Even now, I write critically of Trump every week. I am not going to prison. So I do think sometimes these writers, these journalists, they they stop themselves, they catch themselves. I can't do this because of X. And it's like, well, like, why?
That's a great line. That's a great line, Ross. You catch yourself. My father had no interest in catching himself, and I
Right.
don't think you do. That's why I even found you. Not that I knew who you were. When I read your story that you wrote about Breslin, I said, "Well, who's this Ross Barkan dude?" He actually caught Jimmy in a way that all these other people who wrote about him, and God knows there's thousands and thousands of them, not to boast, but they did. But you captured it in an own way where you had an opinion.
Thank you.
And I mean this, or we wouldn't be rapping here. It'd be a waste of time, yours and mine.
My opinion, which I'll say, I guess I'll give a sharp opinion about Jimmy versus a contemporary. I was not as big a fan of Pete Hamill. I'll say that. Big Jimmy fan. I wrote a piece on Substack when Pete fascinated me. Pete also a Brooklyn guy. Read a lot of Pete. I feel like what I liked about Jimmy Breslin, I'll say, learning about his life and learning about his columns and like how he took stands, he really was willing to confront the New York, I think, used to be a much more reactionary city. I mean, you really had, I think today we do have less ethnic and racial tension. I think things have calmed down to where it was in like the 1960s and 70s. Like I admire like Jimmy's ability in like the Bernie Getz era to really like stand up to the police, to a lot of these elements where it'd be very easy for him as the working class Irish guy to say, lock them all up. The cops are great. We need more vigilantes. Like, of course they should shoot people. And so the fact that like that was very hard for him. Like he was able to, go against his own reading about how the PBA despised him. Of course, the mob despised him. And I think Hamill's a great writer. I like Hamill. One thing I read a piece of his, I remember in the 1990s in the Village Voice, it was this very like nostalgia soaked view of like the old New York. It was good then. Now it's over. Something's gone. I think in a way, Jimmy Breslin was like a more sophisticated thinker where I don't think he would have written that, it was so wonderful in the 1960s. And now where has society got? I mean, he knew, like you read his column.
He'd murder you. He'd murder you. He used to tell me, let's reminisce about tomorrow. He didn't care about yesterday's news. I'd ask him a thing. He'd say about yesterday's news.
Right. So
what do I care? Tell me something I don't know.
I liked that about him. I felt like Hamill, just reading some of those pieces, it was like it felt like the 90s when he was kind of more into middle age and things were obviously changing and it was not the city he remembered. And the city in some ways, not everything's good now. There's plenty of problems today. But yeah, there was like an element of nostalgia I didn't like as much. It felt a bit like, I miss like I miss the Irish, the good Irish New York, the good Italian New York, and where has it gone, and whereas I think Jimmy would have said these guys were...
He'd leave the room on you, Ross. He used to wake up in the morning to write the column with nervous energy.
Yeah.
No, got to get a column. You wouldn't want to be with him. He'd be a guy looking around his city, on the go, on the hunt.
No,
he'd have an idea, he'd get an angle, and he'd go. You didn't want to... It was like a white shark coming right at you.
Yeah.
It wasn't genteel. In fact, he didn't talk much when he would go out for a story. Very quiet.
Yeah.
One word, 2 words.
Which is...
Didn't even jot much on the reporter pad. Paid attention and listened. And you just made me think of how he did it. He did it with nervous energy, raw nervous energy, and he circulated. And what we were talking about at the beginning of this. Do guys really get out there and hit the streets like that anymore?
Harder to. It's harder to. I mean, I'll say... I think, again, I empathize with the journalists. I think journalists still do. I mean, there's a lot of good journalists out there who are doing it. I do think there's less places that let like a columnist do it. I think that's missing from today, where an outlet will pay someone a decent amount of money, a living wage at least, to be able to take that time to go out and do it. That's where the system does hurt you. Now, with places, you do have Substack in place, you can just publish your own stuff. I would like to see more people take that initiative reporting, but reporting does cost money. So I've never tell someone that has like a full-time job doing something else, you should report more. It takes time and money. So I think on one hand, reporters, and columnists should be doing more. On the other hand, the system's got to get better. And I think a place like, again, I point to the New York Times where they've got the money. They could pay someone to be a Jimmy Breslin type or even a Michael Powell type and go out and talk to people and go climb stairs and be in the streets more. And yeah, they've just gotten too nationalized now, so they don't do it. And then, I think some of the other outlets are not voice driven enough, where I think they're good reporting outlets, that they produce good reporting. They don't have like a Breslin type who's gonna go and do that. Now I will say for the nonprofits, I'm guessing why they don't. I don't know this firsthand,
of course.
They're donor supported, and they're like foundation supported, and that's like not a bad thing. But maybe you have a columnist on there popping off, maybe there's like a grant, someone gave a grant or something, or some donor might like it less, versus when the Daily News was supported by ad revenue, and the advertisers could also exert pressure, but they had a lot of money, the Daily News. So one advertiser is mad at Jimmy, couldn't just say couldn't cripple them,
I understand that, but if you're writing out of fear, because you'd always tell me, you go out and find something, come from the other side of the street, tell me something I don't know. Now, you're a young writer today, and you're working for a place, you don't have that. You're saying AI, you've mentioned a lot of stuff here, and it's very fascinating because it smells a little doom and gloom for originality. But do you think it can hold up, or is the game sort of trapped in AI algorithms?
No, I think it can hold up. I think AI is not popular. I mean, AI has been foisted on us, and it's everywhere now, but there's not really an organic love for AI. AI books aren't popular. They scam people, but they aren't popular. People aren't naturally going to a bookstore to buy an AI book. I don't think they ever will. If anything, I think the AI era,
or an AI newspaper column.
No, people don't want. I mean, they're doing it, but it's not like when it gets exposed, people don't like it. AI only works through deception. That's the thing. The AI proponents can never admit that no one wants to consume a magazine or a newspaper that's written by AI. Like, that would annoy them. They wouldn't pay for it. But they can trick people, right? They can if you trick you to know it's a human, people might still consume it. But the minute that you pull the curtain back and you say, no, we're the AI paper, we're the AI Times, everything's written by AI, that news organization is not going to make any money. I mean, it's going to fail. It's not going to be a thing people subscribe to. It's not going to be a thing that gets like support. It's just going to be a slop factory. So I am cautiously optimistic that people today, I find it, especially young people, they're hungry for human connection. They're hungry for good writing. I see it. I see it every day. And I think they're tired. I mean, people are sick of the phones, that they're sick of all distractions. Like, no one's happy about it. Like, it's addicting. There's no, when I came up, I remember, graduating college, there was a lot of optimism around technology. I mean, big tech circa 2012, 2013, people loved Facebook. People were like, Facebook's great. Zuckerberg's amazing. Jeff Bezos, like, he's an entrepreneur. Elon Musk was popular in the 2010s, which people forget. That was like that era. How the world viewed big tech is so different than today. And I take heart in that, because people are waking up. They're realizing these tech oligarchs do not care about you. They have no interest in the future of a literate and successful civilization. They want to enrich themselves, and they want to throw their crap on us. And I'm not anti-tech. I use a lot of technology, but there is definitely an interest in an alternative. I do see that, even as people are still addicted to their phones. I think young people, especially younger than me, kids in their teens today, I mean, and they know how bad they are, and they see their parents on them, and I think a lot of them are sick of it. And so I think in some ways, I think that the tech addictions might be the way cigarette smoking was, where 1960 or 70 or 80, if you told people one day that cigarette smoking would not be common, they wouldn't believe you. And now, of course, we're in this world. So I think that with the cell phone addictions, there's a little pushback. People know it's this stuff is sucking your attention, and it's really not giving you anything in return. In the way, a cigarette feels good, but obviously it can kill you.
One other thing, as I'm listening to you, and of course, I agree with you on many fronts and many things you've said here, and we could split off into a lot of discussions here. But one thing, is there any room for humor anymore? I don't read anybody with humor. My father wrote with humor.
Yes.
He invented characters and he had fun.
Yes.
Can you even do that today?
I lament that as
out.
well. I do think humor needs to come back. I do think that the past 10 years, people in the media, not people are still funny and there's like, but like the media broadly became very self-serious. Maybe it was like the rise of Trump, who was one could not even parodying Trump was such a parody to begin with. But I do think something shifted. I do see a lot less humor. I agree. And there is almost like a risk online where if like you make a joke, people will like take you literally and then they'll just be mad at you. And I think the online world versus like the printed world, you got more leeway in some ways to be funny, to be clearly humorous or sarcastic. Sarcasm on Twitter or X, for example, people won't get it. I want to be more sarcastic, but it can be a challenge. Or if you make a joke, it's like, how can you be joking at a time like this? And we're always in a time like this. You go any period of American history, you're joking during the Vietnam War, you're joking during, horrible Jim Crow, you're joking during, the AIDS crisis. I mean, there are always horrible things happening, and that, Jimmy Breslin wrote about the AIDS crisis that didn't keep him from also writing humorous columns in that period too, as he was one of the very few, which another thing that I admired about him was his ability.
He said you couldn't be all blood and guts. He said, I can't write everyday blood and guts. His age stuff was poignant. You'd sit there, you'd freeze feeling for the young man or the young man.
No, I agree. No, I agree. And I hope
he said he couldn't do it every day. He couldn't hold up.
Yeah. There's a good column in the Times recently by a former TV executive, Roy Price, who's written about how humor fell out in the movies, and now it might slowly be coming back. Like Hollywood, for reasons that aren't like totally clear, in the last 10 years, really stopped producing a lot of comedies. They moved into much more self-serious cinema, and you saw like the era of like the big comedy, which really extended throughout the 2000s into like the early 10s, really disappeared, and now maybe that'll come back too. So I agree. I think there was a humor deficit in society writ large, in the media, in Hollywood, and it was silly. I mean, people want to laugh. Laughter is a part of life. Humor is a part of life. The ability also to skewer all sides. I mean, I think sometimes you get, like SNL, I feel mixed about, because, it felt like at times it would only be skewering, the only Trump and sort of the Republicans, and like I don't like Trump, but I miss like the old SNL would skewer Democrats too. So I hope humor can come back. I really do. I think it can, but it's been missing. I do agree with that.
You've used the word Donald Trump, the name Donald Trump here many times. Now, we come out of Queens County. Donald Trump comes out of Queens County.
Yes.
Great Mario Cuomo comes out of Queens County.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo comes out of Queens County. There are some legitimate thinkers here. I grew up with the name Donald Trump. His father.
Yes.
My father liked his father. And Donald, my father had some pet peeves with him, especially, I believe, when he was going to take over the newspaper. And my father was never afraid to have an opinion towards him. And you have an opinion towards him. And I'm not here to criticize Donald Trump. And we know Jared bought the Observer and did a hell of a job with it. My question is this. I don't understand, since the media helped him so much and he knew how to manipulate the media better than any guy I've ever seen, why now does he turn on the media when they were beyond helpful to him? Now, my father was always pissed off at him and said, don't play with me. But then again, my father was Queens County. Maybe it was in the DNA. But I don't understand why he's so against the media, and it baffles me.
Yeah, well, I think Trump is...
Fake news. It's not fake news.
Yeah.
And I've said this before. There was nothing fake with my father. My father he never made up something to go against you, and I don't think you do either.
No, never have. I think Trump's a funny character. Trump certainly demonizes the media constantly. He does still talk to the media. The funny thing about Trump is, as much as he says the media is fake news, this is a guy who will take a phone call to this day I'm actually trying to get. I'm writing a book about.
Give me his number. I'll call him because I've been fascinated.
I'm writing a book about the new mayor, Mamdani, and I've been trying to. I spoke with Steve Bannon for it, but I've been trying to get the Trump cell phone number. Some people have it because he'll just pick it up. So Trump's weird where he actually was like much more available to the press, like Joe Biden was, for example. But Joe Biden wasn't demonizing and sowing discord, distrust. So it's a strange dichotomy where I think Donald Trump, on one hand, believes anything that's not good about him is fake and bad. And he's been that way for decades. If you wrote about me, I hate you. At the same time, he can't quit the media. And this is someone I think to this day reads the New York Post every day, who will sit down for like broadcast TV interviews and is kind of enamored of the media. But then, yes, he will demonize them and treat them as the enemy. But I think it speaks to kind of this just strange, almost schizophrenic character in Donald Trump, where he does these two things. And it's true. If you wrote this in fiction, people would say this is unrealistic. You can't have the president calling it fake news, also talking to the media constantly and being obsessed with it. But I think that, the fake news, I think part of it is a ploy. I will say, does Donald Trump think it's literally fake? I don't know what Donald Trump thinks, but I do know.
I think he knows they're suckers. Most of the writers are suckers. And if he mentions their names or even on the TV points to them, I think all of a sudden they're gloating. They feel like, oh man, I've been recognized.
Yeah.
I'm big now. I'm big because the president recognizes me, or he spots out somebody at Fox News. He loves Hannity. I don't just like Hannity either. But what I'm saying is that Trump almost plays the media.
Yeah, no, he does.
They're desperate. These guys, the reporters, seem desperate for their own sort of attention.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there's people listening go, Kevin Breslin, I hate you. You're wrong. Well, I'm not certain of that.
No, he definitely has played the media. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He'll tell them conflicting things and kind of what's running through his brain. He'll express them. I think he will play them. I do think he's still enamored. I think in some ways he's still the New York guy who thinks about his name in Page Six, who thinks about the tabloids, who knows exactly who Jimmy Breslin is, and probably still thinks about him. I mean, there was a tangent. So this is very deep. This is a Queens thing. Trump went on a tangent. I think it was like a year ago, just talking. It's like at a prayer breakfast, and he mentions this Congressman Cy Halpern, who my father actually worked for as a young man. So I knew who this was. Republican congressman from Queens who represented Fred Trump, Jamaica Estates, and he had actually probably your Richmond Hill area. He was the congressman there for 15 years or something.
Yes.
So
yes.
And people are like, who the heck? Why is he talking about Cy Halpern? And I think Donald Trump to this day thinks a lot about Queens and a lot about the old world. And I think the media still belongs to that for him. In a way, Donald Trump probably likes the media more than some other Republicans, and that to him there is still meaning to, even if he hates the New York Times, being in the New York Times or being in the New York Post, being in the Daily News, these things really resonate. And it's why I think, writing about his strange relationship with the new mayor, people how can Donald Trump bond with Zoran Mamdani and call him a communist, and then they have a happy meeting at the White House. I think the fact that he represented Queens in the state assembly, he is a New York kid. He's a star. He's very popular. And I think these things for Donald Trump, it's wow, a New York star, I asked Steve Bannon about this, and I'm well, didn't Trump respect Obama? Obama was a star, and Bannon was no, Obama's from Chicago. He doesn't take Chicago seriously, but Mamdani did it in New York, and that impresses him. If you made it in New York. So I think that still to this day, it's why he still thinks about New York a lot. And I think probably would have a lot of, if you called him up now and talk to Breslin, you'd have many opinions. I'm sure he'd remember columns too. He seems like
my father said, when you leave New York, you ain't going anywhere.
I think Trump still, even though he's living in Mar-a-Lago, I think Trump sort of has some of that in him, honestly. I think as much as he's in a Florida guy, I do think he doesn't take it as seriously as New York. I think he'll always take New York seriously. I think for all his deep-seated problems and personality failings. Like, he cares about the city. And then it's sort of interesting. He might get the new the new Penn Station might happen because of Trump. I will say he may do one good thing in these 4 years. As I was reading about it recently, they might actually move Penn Station. If he may convince Dolan. So if he does that, and move Madison Square Garden to build a new Penn Station. If Trump does that, he will have done one good thing in a sea of horror. So I would like a new Penn Station.
So what would you tell some young reporters trying to come up in this game? What's the game? Just get out there, do the legwork.
Yeah, I would.
Can't sit in an office. You'd be ruined.
Do the legwork. Go out. Try to get a staff job. Try to freelance. Do all those things. The nice thing about today versus the Jimmy Breslin era is the upside of the internet is you can just publish your own stuff. You can just put your stuff out there. So try to work for someone. Try to freelance. Do all those things. But Substack is there. There's such an opening still for like good New York City stuff. I mean, it's such a big city. I mean, you could pick a beat like local politics, pick a borough. Like, I'm going to do the Bronx politics Substack, and you can own it. And
wow,
there's not really, because you've had so much retrenchment on that local level compared to your father's era where the Daily News had like bureaus filled with reporters. I mean, 10 reporters in Brooklyn, whatever it was, 8 in the Bronx. Even when I started out, there were still Queens Bureau reporters. There were like 2 or 3, but they would still, when I would, as a Queens Tribune reporter, go to a press conference, there's always a Daily News reporter there, usually with me. And that's over. That's all done, tragically. So if I were a young reporter today, I'd be like, you know what? Get out there in the local beat. And it's not that hard to make an impact because there's been such a decline in the manpower. Go to a community board meeting. It used to be like tabloid reporters would sit at community board meetings. They don't anymore. They don't have that many people. They don't do it. It's a massive city, and each borough is its own city in essence. So there are all these opportunities. If you're like a young, restless, ambitious person, just go places. And I'm not even saying you have to like find a massive corruption scandal right away or do something blockbuster. I mean, you do the basic stuff that Jimmy Breslin and all these columnists did. He's talk to people, to go to a meeting, go to a parade, or go to like the precinct council meetings and talk to a politician who, it used to be the local pols were interviewed a lot. They're not interviewed so much. I mean, they are, but not as much, I would say. I mean, even when I was the New York Observer, we were doing a lot of local reporting. So, a Brooklyn city councilman would be on the phone with us maybe every week or every 2 weeks or something. And that's all changed. So my advice would be, if you're interested in local reporting and local journalism, if you know the lore and you like all that stuff, try to get a staff job, but don't wait. Like, I think now there aren't that many staff jobs. Freelancing is good, but tough. Don't sit. I think the mistake you can make is just sitting back and waiting months and months, or waiting for my pitch to get answered. Have that Jimmy Breslin energy. Like, get out there. Like you can do it. You can publish it yourself, and hopefully you can build an audience. I think you can, because there is just a lot less of it. I think so much now is about finding your lane, finding your niche. And the one upside to this kind of era of local media decline, and there aren't many upsides, the one is there are just more opportunities for young people especially to write about the city. So
exactly,
it's not even close to being saturated. I'll say that it's not even close. I mean, even there are a lot of good outlets I can name check today, from Politico to City and State, to Hellgate to Gothamist. But even so, I mean, there's so much they can't get to, especially in the outer boroughs, especially Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island. I mean, I just know from the fact that when I started at the Tribune, we had 4 or 5 weekly newspapers, and they're mostly gone now. And even then, there's a lot of action, and that sadly isn't true. So yeah, you get out there, go to Flushing, go to Richmond Hill, go to
exactly, Ross. All news is local, and that's why I'm so happy we're speaking with you today, because your understanding of it is very similar to what my father articulated. And I think you're doing a very good job, and you are the future, and you will
Thank you.
continue to help other people. And what you shared with us is really, really, really interesting today. And what are you doing with yourself? What's up next that people should know about you?
Oh man, I will give my self promotion. I do have to ask one question. Tell me about your father and the Beach Boys. You mentioned this. This is deeply fascinating to me. It covers two things.
Yes, your Beach Boy column was great, by the way. I really enjoyed your Beach Boy story. I'm glad you brought that up.
Tell me about this.
Well, it started probably with my cousins who were Beach Boy addicts all those long ago. We were tiny kids, and they would play the music. And JB went to the Madison Square Garden to a Beach Boy concert.
Yeah.
And he was with Brian Wilson backstage. My brother James knows more about that. I don't know if he wrote the column or not, but he wanted to see what that Brian was like.
Yeah.
And I know he loved the Beach Boy music. Just that was JB like that. He liked the Beach Boys. Well, he loved music. My father loved music. His father was a failed musician. Well, he wasn't a failed musician. He was an alcoholic, but he was actually a successful musician. Brian Wilson. He loved the Beach Boys.
It's amazing. Would have been if I'm guessing that would have been in the 70s because they did it.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden. That much I really remember. I'll find out from my brother James and do it. Well, my father also created the illusion of that. Even with the Beach Boys, he pretended one time that my brother was a surfer and he needed a column. Here's good for young columnists. He decided he was listening to my brother about surfing, and he said, "Yeah, you went surfing where? Rockaway, yeah. You were sitting out in the lineup. What do you mean the lineup? Tell me, what'd you wear? Wetsuit? What kind of wetsuit? What kind of surfboard? How were the waves? Tell me how they were breaking. Was it current?"
Yeah.
Next thing you know, he writes a newspaper column that he was surfing in Rockaway, wearing all the stuff, using that board with the currents, the shifting wave peaks, and he writes about it. And all of a sudden, there's a magazine, Surfer Magazine, similar to the Beach Boys, saying, East Coast writing legend Jimmy Breslin is a surfer, hence the Beach Boys surfing.
That's great. No,
but you can't do that now.
No,
you can't. They say you're a liar and you're reckless and you should be fired or something.
No, you can't have fun like that anymore. Warms my heart that he was a Beach Boy aficionado, as I'm a fanatic. So I guess what am I promoting? Good question. I have a novel, Colossus, out April 28th. Pre-order that. It's quite good. You subscribe to my Substack as well. Political Currents. You search my name, Ross Barkan, you'll find it. And you can check me out, do my twice a week New York Mag column. And yeah, that's it. I can always give more. That's 3 good ones. That's enough homework. So.
Ross, I'll catch you one of these days. Pleasure, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.